Welcome back, fantasy football fans and family. I am Jonathan from Fantasy Football Kingdom, and I'm back here with some European League of Football content for you. Today, I will be talking about the Berlin Thunder and the Wroclaw Panthers players. They have some really nice and interesting players on their rosters for fantasy reasons, and today we start with Slade Jarman, the new quarterback for the Wroclaw Panthers. He is a dual threat quarterback. He has rushing upside, as shown by his two rushing touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. He also can pass. The only issue is he is a little bit turnover prone right now. He had like at least one interceptions per game. But if he can tune down the interceptions or at least keep them low, he is a really nice start in your leagues. Let's switch to the Berlin Thunder quarterback, Joe Germinario. He is not a new quarterback. He started the whole season, and he has a low floor for a quarterback. He scores touchdowns through the air, and he has some rushing upside. He has actually 2 rushing touchdowns, but there are a lot of fumbles. There are fumbles lost, and he throws a lot of interceptions as well. All in all, the Berlin Thunder are a more run-heavy team, so there are not a lot of passing yards for George Maneri to score. So his fantasy performance vary. His last week against the Panthers actually was his best fantasy performance with 26.6 points. He had 2 touchdowns through the air, one on the floor, one on the ground, and 2 interceptions as well. But that if he can continue this trend, maybe you can start him. Let's switch to the running backs. We have David Borowski. Probably not pronouncing this right. I apologize, but he is the new lead running back. At least this game is the new lead running back for the Wroclaw Panthers. He had 18 attempts for 89 yards, and this results in 4.9 yards per carry. Sadly, no touchdown on the ground, no touchdown through the air. Although he had 2 receptions for 9 yards, which is really nice for a running back if he can be utilized in the passing game. Sorry. We will have to look out what the Panthers are doing on the running back positions. I think David had a really productive day. Only the touchdown is missing for a really nice fantasy performance. So have an eye out for David Brożowski. The Berlin Thunder running back Shock Crawford is a really strong fantasy player. He had a down week in week 1 against Hamburg, but he's like the main focal point of the Berlin Thunder offense, so you can start him every week. He topped 100 yards on the ground like 3 times, and he also adds a couple receptions each game to his game. The only thing that worries me a little bit with Shock Crawford is his age. He's 35 years old, so maybe you have to look out for in the second half of the season that he may slow down a little bit. His efficiency is varying. Has something about 3.5 yards per carry last week against the Panthers, but still he scored the touchdown on the floor, on the ground. And there is another issue with him. That's the fumbles, but he makes up for that with the high volume that he is producing for you every single week. He has at least 19 rushing attempts starting from week 2. So you can pretty safely start Shock Crawford, but maybe there are better options for the real running back 1 positions right now. Then we switch to the wide receivers. Let's start with the Panthers wide receiver. There's a new one, or a little intriguing one from the Panthers. It's Jakub Mazan, and he had his best fantasy week last week against the Thunder. 5 receptions for 79 yards and a touchdown. And he added 1 small rushing attempt for 2 yards. That's not really important, but you can see they trust him with some rushing work as well. He also showed out in week 2 already with a touchdown and 67 yards. But and in week 5 he had like 7 receptions for 84 yards. So there is like a really high upside for him if he can find the end zone. and he has the receptions, the volume, the passing volume, the targets as well, apparently. So he is not the real number one wide receiver for the Panthers, but he is a good wide receiver 2 option if you have to look for one, because the targets are there and the receptions as well. So there are touchdowns, not a lot yet, but they are, and they could keep coming for Jakub. The real number one wide receiver for the Panthers is Malik Stanley. He is an US import, and his touchdown production slowed down in the last 2 weeks, which means his fantasy performance were substandard for him at least, and he still scored over 10 points every week. So in week 5 and 6. He had his best performance in week 4, where he scored 3 touchdowns and 144 yards in the air, receiving. And if he can get back into the end zone, if he can find the end zone again in the next weeks, you can just surefire start him as a wide receiver 1. He gets the receptions. He has no less than 5 receptions every week. And yeah, the rushing attempt for -4 yards, I will be ignoring that for now because I don't think that it's really necessary to dig into this. But Malik Stanley can be your wide receiver 1 pretty easily. He has solid numbers all over the board. And the one thing that I saw is like his yards per catch were going up until week 5. Dropped a little bit in week 6 again, but it's like a nice trend you can follow. So he has he really gets the deep passes, deep receptions ready for you. All right, another wide receiver, another intriguing prospect, I would say. He didn't do a lot in the first 5 games this season, but he showed out in week 6 against the Panthers. 5 receptions for 167 yards. 76, which means 35.2 yards per catch. So really, really big plays in there. 2 touchdowns as well, results in 32.1 fantasy points. He seems to be a deep threat. You can see it here, his yards per catch are super high, but he couldn't do much with the targets and the receptions in the previous weeks. He missed week 3 and week 5. It's Robin Wilczek from the Berlin Thunder. He's 23 years old, so he's a young guy. But the Thunder are not really a pass-heavy offense. There are not many receivers that are really fantasy-worthy. But Robin Wilczek is on the map right now with this superstar performance in week 6. All right. That's it for now for the Thunder and Panthers fantasy players from week 6, the best ones at least. And maybe we can dig in some other more fringe-worthy players in the next couple of weeks. But I thank you for watching this video, and we will see you soon with the next episode for Fantasy Football Kingdom and the European League of Football Fantasy Podcast. Bye-bye.